Hi and welcome to another very exciting quick tip tutorial. This tutorial is all about improving your Swift language skills, and we're going to have a look at two very cool Swift functions. The first one is map, the second one is filter, and you're going to see that you can use those two functions in many of your projects. But just to keep it simple, let's imagine the following situation that you might remember from school. So we have this quadratic function here, x to the power of 2, and if you have a look, and if you were to calculate the y values for an x value, let's just have a look at the positive x direction, you can see that you have always the square. 1 corresponds with 1, 2 corresponds with, so let me just move up here a little, 2 corresponds with 4, and 3 corresponds with 9, and so on and so on. So let's have a look at how we can implement that in Swift code, and let's see how we can even simplify that. So let me close that graph now, and let's do that in Playground. So we're just focusing on syntax here, and on the paradigm or on the functions that we're going to use. So Playground will completely suffice, and I'm going to call that map filter. And let me create that, close my battery warning here, and let's zoom in here a little. And we can remove this first string. And actually, we also do not need UIKit here. Foundation will completely suffice. So let's say we will start with a couple of values. And let's say this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's keep it simple. And now we'd like to calculate the squares. So let's create a variable for that, squares, which is going to be an array of doubles. And let's initialize that with an empty array. And a traditional way of doing that would be, for example, with a for in loop. So what we can do here is creating a value in our values, and then simply use our squares array and append value times value to get the square. All right, so now if we just have a look at squares, you can see that this definitely works with 4, 9, 16, 24, 25, and 36. But how can we simplify that? We'd like to use the map function, and map loops over a collection, so we can use it with every collection type like dictionaries, arrays, or sets, and applies the same operation to each element in that collection. So how does it look like in action? So what we want to do is we want to create a squares with map constant here, and then we will use our values and simply call the map function. And our code completion here helps us to understand what we need to do. So we have an argument here, a parameter, and we have a return value that we have to take a look at. And the map function actually returns an array containing the results of the applied operation. So first of all, let's use the code completion here, and we are required to use a double. So let's use value, and we want to return a double. All right, so all we need to do now is return value times value. And if we have a look at squares with map, we definitely should get the same result. And here we go. We have 4, 9, 16, and so on. So this is one way of doing that, but we can even simplify this a lot more. The closure that we are going to use now the map closure has a single argument, which is our value, and it returns a double. But Swift can infer this. So also, since map has a single argument, which is a closure, we do not need the parentheses around the arguments, and with a single line, we can even get rid of the return. So let's have a look at how we can do this. So we use squares with map2, and what we can do now is again use our values, call the map function, and then we use our curly braces here. And we have our argument value, and Swift infers that this is going to be a double. and then we use the in keyword to separate the parameter or the argument from the body of the closure, and then we will simply use the value times value. And that's all there is to it. And let's have a look if we have the same result. And we indeed do. So this is even simpler. Let's see if we can even simplify that a little more with numbered arguments. So, and you're going to be astonished if you haven't seen that already. So Swift with squares with map3. Again, we use the values, use our map function, and instead of having some parentheses here, we're simply defining our closure with some curly braces, and then we're using the $sign for a numbered arguments, and then we use $0, $0 to get the exact same result. And as you can see, with this piece of code, we can get rid of this amount of code. So let's just have a look if we get the same result here. So squares with map3. And again, we have the same result. So what else can we do with the map feature? So imagine you have some amounts of a shopping system or whatever you would like to use here. So let's use amounts and create an array of amounts. So maybe something costs $123, $11, $25, $234, and maybe $111. And now we would like to display these amounts, but with a currency symbol like the dollar symbol. And what we can do now is create a prices array, and we use the amounts, use the map feature, and then we can easily use string interpolation here. So to use something like this, so we have our string and we want our $sign, and then we simply use the numbered argument here, and then let's have a look at how prices results. And as you can see here, we now have $123 and so on and so on. So this works quite nicely. But what else can we do, and what other practical approaches can we use? Let's imagine that you have a type like person, and we're going to use a struct for that. Let's call that person. And we have two properties. Let's say a name, which is a string, and an age, which is integer. And then we're going to init our struct with name, string, and age, integer. And let me give us some space here. And then let's initialize the name with name, and let's initialize the age with age. And now we have our person type that we can use. And let's now imagine that we have a person dict. You could have gotten that information from a database or a plist or whatever. And we have, for example, Steve, he's 48. We have Kim, she is 36. And we have Pete, he is maybe 22 years old. So we have a simple dictionary here. But what we'd like to do now is create an array of person objects. And we can even use our map feature right here. And let's use a persons array here. And we are going to use the persons dictionary, use the map function. And then we will simply define our closure here. And now we have to define two arguments, the name and the age. And then with the in, we separate again the arguments from our closure body. And then all we want to do with every element in our dictionary is creating a person object with a name and an age. So don't forget the parentheses here. And then we have 4 person objects just with one single line of code. And let's see if this worked. So we use our persons, access the first element of our array. We could also use first. And we can access the name or the age or whatever. So we have Steve right here. So this also works quite nicely. And I think by applying this map function, this will make your code in many cases a lot easier to read and also a lot easier for you to implement some features. So let's also have a look at the filter function. And we use filter to loop again over a collection and return an array containing only those elements that match a specific condition. And how is that going to look in code? So we create an array of numbers, and what we want to do is only get the even numbers from this list of numbers. So let's just specify a bunch of numbers here. We have some even numbers, we have some odd numbers, and now let's use even numbers, another array here, and then let's access the numbers array, and this time we're going to use the filter function, and the syntax is pretty much the same, and we can also use the numbered arguments. So let's check if we have, let's specify a condition to see if we have even numbers, and our argument modulo 2 should be equal to 0 if we have an even number, and let's see if the result is correct. And as you can see, we only have a list of even numbers. So these were pretty simple examples for using the map and filter function, but I hope you have seen how they can simplify your life, and especially when working together with your own types. And this is going to be a huge leap forward if you don't have to use for-in loops or anything like that to perform this simple operation. And this is actually an example that I already showed in a live stream. And by the way, let me know if you're interested in more live streams by giving this video a thumbs up or comment below. And don't forget to register for Swift Tutorial Conference. It's going to be great. We're going to release the program soon. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.